Good morning, everyone. Today we are starting our new unit on special segments in triangles. So let's get started. We have quite a few special segments and terms to learn. Some of them we may have brushed upon before in past chapters. So first we have our perpendicular bisector, which is a segment or a line that intersects a side of a triangle at a 90-degree angle and also cuts the segment into two congruent segments. So a perpendicular bisector, an example of that here would be if I called this AB, CD. In this picture, AB is a perpendicular bisector. AB coming down makes these right angles. Okay. So that's where it says it intersects at a 90-degree angle. It also cuts the segment down here into two congruent pieces. So these would be equal. Okay, so since AB is a perpendicular bisector, that means that CB is congruent to BD. So if AB is a perpendicular bisector, then CB would be equal to BD. Also, angle CBA and angle DBA would be equal to 90 degrees. So let's put that into context with a problem. So BD is the perpendicular bisector of AC. So BD is here. It's a perpendicular bisector of this line AC. Okay. Find X. So if we know it's a perpendicular bisector, we know that these two pieces are congruent. So I can set these two equal to each other, and I can solve for X. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Get 2x minus 6 equals 8. And then I'm going to add 6. I get 2x equals 14, so x is 7. Now, they also said that dB, and this is meant to be hopefully it's fixed on your paper when I print it, but it is meant to be a C. No. dBA. It's meant to be an A. dBA. So angle DBA is equal to 32 degrees. Okay. DBA is equal to 32 degrees, and they want to know what angle A is. Okay, what is angle A? So this is using that triangle sum, knowing that 3 angles in a triangle add to 180. So we're just focusing on this triangle here. You should know, we said that if a perpendicular bisector comes down, it makes these two 90-degree angles. So that means that this angle, BDA, is 90 degrees. So I have 90 plus 32. That gives me 122. And then I need to know what angle A would need to be to form this triangle. So I'm going to do 180 minus 122, and that gives me 58 degrees. So angle A would have to be 58 degrees because these three should add to 180 to make a triangle. Okay. Moving on to angle bisector. An angle bisector is a segment or a line that cuts an angle of a triangle into two congruent angles. So if I call this ABDC, AB is an angle bisector of angle DAC. So AB is bisecting angle DAC, which means it's cutting that angle in half. So that means these two angles have to be equal to each other. So if AB is an angle bisector of this angle, then angles DAB should be congruent to angles CAB. What does that mean in the context of a problem? If MR, it's a little cut off here, sorry about that. If this is a P. If MR is the angle bisector of NMP, so this MR is cutting it in half, so angles 1 and 2 should be congruent. But they're only giving us angle 1. They're saying angle 1 is 5x plus 8. So they gave us this, and then they're giving us NMP, which is this whole thing. So this goes back to that part plus a part equals a whole, right? When we used to do angle addition, we would say angles 1 and 2 add together to equal NMP. Well, in this case, we know that angles 1 and 2 are the same. So I can write down angle 1, and I can just multiply it by 2, because this should both be equal. They should both be 5x plus 8. And then we can set it equal to the whole thing, 12x plus 2. If you would rather like to think of it as addition, you could also write it as 5x plus 8 plus 5x plus 8 equals the whole thing. Okay. If you do it this way, you need to distribute that 2. So 2 times 5x is 10x. 2 times 8 is 16. Then we're going to take away 10x from both sides. We got 2x plus 2. Then we're going to subtract 2 from both sides, and we're left with 2x equals 14. So once again, x is 7. Now, all they asked us to do here was find x, so our problem is solved. We found x is 7. Okay, so just remember, in a problem like this, 1 and 2 are congruent, so just double whatever one of them is, and that should equal the whole thing. Okay, flipping to the back side, we have our median. A median is a segment that connects a vertex of a triangle, so this would be our vertex, to the midpoint of the opposite side. So if I called this A, B, C, and D, D is my vertex that they're talking about. B is becoming the midpoint. It's connecting the vertex to the midpoint of the other side. If you remember correctly, a midpoint is the middle point between these two, the middle of a segment. So that means these two must be equal if it's the middle. So in this problem, B is a midpoint. If B is a midpoint, then AB is congruent to BC. So if B is a midpoint and DB is a median, we should also add. So if DB is a median, then B is a midpoint, and that also makes AB congruent to BC. Okay. Now looking at this triangle, they're saying BD is a median. If BD is a median, then D is a midpoint. So that means these two pieces are congruent. So I can set 6x plus 3 equal to 7x minus 1. I can take away 6x from both sides. Leaves me with x minus 1 over here. And then I can add 1, and I'm left with x is 4. And all they asked me for here was x, so I'm all set. The last term for today is the altitude. The altitude is a segment that connects a vertex of a triangle to the side opposite that vertex. So this would be our vertex. This connects it to the side opposite it. And all it does, guys, is the segment's perpendicular to that side. So that means that these angles are 90 degrees. So this line connecting to the opposite side is just, it's just perpendicular. So it's just making those 90 degree angles. These segments are not congruent. So if I'm looking at this problem here, they want us to find x and xt, given that PT is an altitude. So PT is coming down and making those 90 degree angles. PTS, so this angle here, is equal to 5x plus 10. And we also know it should be equal to 90. We just labeled that. So I can take away 10 from both sides. I get 5x equals 80. So x is 16. Now that I've found x, they also want me to find xt. So I can go ahead and plug in this x to 2x minus 5. And I get 32 minus 5, which is 27. So xt is equal to 27. If x was not in here, you would not be able to find it, because that pt dropping down and being an altitude doesn't tell you anything about these segments like it does when we have a median or when we have a perpendicular bisector. So perpendicular bisector and altitude are very similar, so you have to be careful you don't mix them up. Remember that the altitude, all it does is drop down and make those 90-degree angles, whereas that perpendicular bisector does that, but also tells you that those two segments are congruent. All right, that is 5.1 special segments, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. Come to ACLAB if you need any help.